Hello, welcome one, welcome all to another episode of the Black Diamond Podcast via the Ascension Podcast Network. I'm Chris, he's Jerry, and this is episode 28. The Joe Girardi as a manager / Austin Wells / Daniel Murphy episode of the program. I guess we could do a little, give a quick shout out to JD Martinez as well, even though his future seems pretty uncertain or bleak with the Mets.
Yeah.
Doesn't really seem like he's necessarily going to be back. But the hot stove is heating up. It is now December. Thanksgiving's over. This is usually the time. I think winter meetings are coming up this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the time where things really start to heat up, and obviously, the main thing at the forefront of the baseball world, especially the New York baseball world, is the bidding war that is currently taking place for one Juan Soto. The latest reports are that the bidding has crossed the $660 million threshold, and that he has supposedly began the process of elimination as far as eliminating teams. But the Yankees are still reportedly in it. I imagine the Mets are still in it too. There's been, obviously, we talked a little bit about this before. We talked a little bit about this before the show opened, but just the amount of misinformation and fake reporters and fake sources on the internet that has gone on during this whole thing is unlike anything we've seen before. More than anything, though, I do hope that the news, I do hope we hear, even if we don't get a news on the signing soon, I do hope that we hear that the Red Sox and or Blue Jays have been eliminated from, from the sweepstakes for his services, just because, it seems like their fans or their source people, they seem to be the loudest with the fake sources and being like, oh yeah, I saw some tweet from some Blue Jays fan being like, oh, Yankees and Mets fans are acting all high and mighty as if we can't outbid anyone. It's it had very much I'm definitely not mad and please tell the newspaper I'm not mad type of energy.
Having fun with my friends just off in the distance in this picture.
Yeah. And then and then there was also it seems like there's a new Red Sox fan or Twitter account reporting that he's going to be a Red Sox this whole time, to the point where I think Jared Carabas is even acknowledging it and kind of hopping on that train. I mean, what else is he supposed to do? But more than anything, I just kind of want to see those people upset.
Now, far be it from me. I mean, I am not the journalistic oracle here, and sometimes random folks occasionally break this stuff. But and I know it's not a good thing to do anymore. But to quote Robert Kelly, use your common sense. When a hockey insider is telling you that he has the inside scoop on Juan Soto, take a step back and think, why would Scott Boras and Juan Soto and his people tell the hockey insider? Would it go to Paston, Rosenthal, any of those guys? No. We're going to tell some random Bruins blogger what our next move is.
Yeah, right.
Use your common sense.
Yeah, use your noggin or whatever's left up there. Just use it. CTE is running rampant in our society today, but I'm sure that we can still I'm sure we can still piece a couple brain cells together to kind of just kind of, if you think it through, obviously it makes no sense whatsoever. And I mean, for what it's worth, I know that when Ohtani was a free agent last year, he ran like a super tight ship with the whole thing.
Yes.
Like he even said, like, yeah, if you leak anything about this, like if anything leaks, like you're like out of the picture. Soto, I mean, he doesn't, he's been quiet himself, but obviously, aside from that one commercial where he switched to like T-Mobile or whatever.
Celsius.
Yeah, Celsius. That's right.
Listen, if the Mets sign Juan Soto, I am not a Celsius person. Listen, if that's how we got to pay this thing off, call me the.
What's that, like an energy drink?
Sure. Also, as long as we're talking about like misinformation and stuff like that, Chris and I talked about this before we went on air, and now depending on when you see this, things may have changed. So who knows? I'm hearing the term endgame getting thrown around a lot. So who knows? By the time you see this, Juan Soto might be signed. I don't know.
It's Marvels, baby. My goal is to unless Soto signs during this podcast, my goal is to have it posted pretty much immediately.
Listen, if he does, you're gonna have a hell of a reaction shot one way or the other. But the timeline today, and I have tried to make the migration to Blue Sky, and Chris and I were talking about this as well before we went on, is until everyone's, or at least all of the important news people and like people that are connected with the sport are all over there, which I don't think Passan is yet. I know Rosenthal is, but like all the people that you would normally go to during situations like this, not everyone's made the switch yet. And until we do that, I got to go back and check Twitter occasionally. If I don't post on Twitter anymore, but like if I need info, I got to go there. And
right,
my surprise today, like late afternoon, early evening, when I find the timeline doing tricks on it about information they got from David Pingalore, who, if you're uninitiated, he's a sports anchor now out in LA, and he's been trying to be out in front on this for a couple weeks now. But people really were lapping it up today because he thought he got some quotes at the Blake Snell introductory press conference. I can give you some extra perspective here. David Pingalore, about 10, 12 years ago, was a local sports anchor for the Orlando TV stations. And he really tried to make himself to be a big deal in Orlando, which, for those of you that don't know, if you want to pause this show, go Google David Pingalore, Dwight Howard, Stan Van Gundy. He tried to interject himself into that constantly. May have even caused some things to happen during that whole drama, which affected my basketball team for a decade. No thanks. So yeah, when it comes to David Pingalore trusting or supposedly being the source for info in the Juan Soto sweepstakes, I'll trust Andy Martino before I trust David Pingalore. And I don't exactly have the highest opinion of Andy Martino, so take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think. I think that Mark Gooden of the National Enquirer is actually probably has more.
But he was with the Federalist Society. What happened?
Yeah. Oh, he left the Federalists. I think it's been a while ago. He left the Federalists like I think a couple of years ago, and he moved on to the National Enquirer. I guess the Federalist was like not really. I guess they just weren't paying him enough, or they weren't letting him charge enough for the subscription. So they, so he jumped ship and went to the National Enquirer, and they also gave him a promotion where he is now the senior beat writer for the New York Mets for the National Enquirer. So I think that was that.
Oh no, wait, I'm confusing him with Richard Staff. Carry on.
Yes,
Richard Staff's wife left him, not Mark Gooden. Carry on.
Yeah. Shout outs to Mark Gooden, and probably one of the funniest accounts on Mets Twitter and all of Twitter. He's also been reporting. I don't know how the Mets are really going to pull it off if they do. Even if Soto does choose the Mets, I don't know how they're going to pull it off, because according to him, every person the Mets have signed is going to be wearing the number 22 next year. So they might have to might have to work some things out there.
We're gonna have multiple Eli Manning, Jeff Fiegels type situations.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Well, if that's what
but Soto
happens,
would be good for that.
yeah, he'll have the money. He'll have the money. I mean, right now the bidding's at 660. So I mean, does this get to 700 or does it go over? Like, it's hard to imagine he would make more than Ohtani. But also maybe he will, because it's not necessarily about like being better or like what you can do, or the fact that Ohtani is like a two-way player who, pitches and hits, except not this year. It's not really about that. It's more like when it's your turn to get paid, and the fact that Juan Soto is in a unique situation where he's 26 years old and in the prime of his career, and it's his time to get paid. So, could it
That's
go
one of
over
the things that I've
700?
heard is very important in terms of who signs him is there's going to be opt-outs in here. I mean, and this is always true with mega deals. I mean, really the only exception's Bryce, because Bryce had a no movement clause in his, no opt-outs. He said, I'm here the whole time. But
Yeah.
everyone else has an opt-out, whether it's at 5, whether it's at 4.
Yeah.
I mean, I know A-Rod famously had it. I know Sabathia famously had it. And sometimes
Machado has opt-outs, right?
He did. And
Yeah.
sometimes guys use it, and sometimes guys, I think, just like having it in there because it kind of acts as an incentivizer of, hey, listen, if you start messing around or you start resting on your laurels as a club, I can always just opt out, and then what are you going to do? But you bring up a good point with him being 26, because very rarely does someone this good hit free agency this early. So he could always look at it as, provided I'm healthy, when I'm 30 or 31, I'm probably still going to be this good of a hitter, and my services will still be in demand. I'll still have the name recognition, and who knows what kind of resume he runs up in the next 5 years, where, does he run up RBI titles? Does he run up a batting title? Does he win an MVP? Does he win multiple World Series? Who knows? But he could have a kind of 5-year run here where he could jump back out and go, all right, for all you guys who missed out on me last time, what are we prepared to do now? And that could be the thing too, where I initially thought it's probably going to cross 700, but I think he would probably settle for 650, 660 if it meant all these other things that maybe to you and I aren't a big deal, but for someone who is in the prime of their earning potential right now means the world to them.
Yeah, I could definitely see there being multiple opt-outs. I think I heard that like the latest Yankees offer included like several opt-outs. Like, if it's like, because like I'm assuming that this is probably going to end up being like a 12 or 13-year deal, like similar to what like Machado and Bryce Harper, both the deals they signed. I mean, obviously it's going to be a fuck ton more money. It's probably going to be like over double what they got in 2019. But,
I mean, you have to assume it's going to be at least $50 million a year.
But the term will probably be similar, because both those players were like 25, 26 years old when they were free agents. So it would make sense that it would be a similar term, like something that if the contract were to go the duration, he would be with that team for the rest of his career. Frankly, I kind of do think that, I don't know anything. I don't have info or anything like that. I don't have sources. I will never pretend to unless I do, but as of right now, I don't have any, anyone feeding me information. But to me, I think that it is a 2-team race right now between the Yankees and Mets. I think that any other teams that are perceived to be in it, like the Red Sox, Blue Jays, or whoever else, I think they're pretty much just being used for leverage.
The Dodgers do scare me until I hear them say publicly, we're not doing this. I'm just going to assume they're always in the picture.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Like it seemed it's like almost too quiet for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Like, as far as the Soto thing goes, I mean, they've been making all these other moves too. I mean, they re-signed Tommy Edman, they re-signed Teoscar Hernandez, they signed Blake Snell. So they've been definitely making moves to to keep their team together and, to get their title defense off to like a very strong start. And like my initial thought was they're not going to sign Soto because like they just won the World Series without him. They already have like, they already got, Ohtani and Yamamoto. That's $1 billion in mostly deferred money right there. And then, they're probably gonna, believe they're the front runners to get the that other Japanese pitcher that's coming out.
Rocky Sasaki.
Yes, him. I assume that. Yeah, they're probably the favorites to get him because it does seem that the Dodgers specifically, the West Coast teams, but specifically the Dodgers, do seem to have the the advantage when it comes to when it does come to signing the Japanese pitchers.
And I just want to bring this up with the Dodgers. I am told every July 1st that deferred money is a bad thing and it should be ridiculed. The Dodgers disagree, apparently.
Yeah, they disagree and they won. And I mean, it's actually hilarious. Like I've started to see Yankee fans start to complain about like the Dodgers and like what they're doing, and it's just like the irony of it all is definitely.
It's why I don't blame the Dodgers for spending money.
There's nothing stopping anyone else from doing it.
Right. That's what I want my team to do. That's what my team's trying to do. How can I get on another team for actually doing it? The deferred money thing I only look at because it's like, again, and I don't think we've ever had a full-length discussion on here about it, and maybe we'll do it some other time. But to me, it's like the only team that ever gets shit on for it. The Dodgers are making it their whole strategy, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's masterful gambit, sir."
Yeah. Well, you gotta see how everything ages with stuff like that. Obviously, I mean, even now it's aging very well for the Dodgers. Like, they won one World Series. I don't know if one World Series is necessarily worth $1 billion, in the next decade. I feel like you probably have to at least get one or two more to really get your bang for your buck. I mean, the Dodgers, whoever owns the Dodgers is probably just going to sell the team and leave someone else with that bill anyway. At least that's my theory. But, you always have to see how these things age. Because, I mean, I'm sure at the time, the Bobby Bonilla thing, I'm sure it didn't seem like a bad idea at all. And, like, yeah, he gets paid $1 million a year now. And it's kind of just more of like, it's kind of just more of a meme than anything. But, like, it's not my money. It's not your money. And it's not precluding the Mets from doing anything as far as pursuing free agents now. Maybe in a different lifetime with the Wilpons, maybe it was more of a problem. Although still, it's $1 million a year. That's chump change. But
I still think one of the first things Steve Cohen should have done when he took ownership was whatever the rest of that was.
Just get it off the books.
Here, you're not gonna joke on us anymore about this. This is done.
I'm tired. Yeah, like he's a fan, so it's like he's probably tired of hearing it too. But I do wonder because I think I heard that, like, not to like get deeper into this than intended, but I think I heard that like Bonilla's wife was the one who like set that whole thing up with the deferred payments.
That might be true. I can't say with 100% certainty.
So like maybe they just prefer it that way. Maybe they don't want to like have this like large lump sum of cash like just delivered to them right away. Maybe they're not.
Maybe you presented it to me that Bobby Bonilla's wife,
I don't know. Maybe this keeps them. Maybe this keeps them like a little grounded.
If you presented it to me that Bobby Bonilla's wife is smarter than the Wilpons, I would buy it.
Yeah, no, that makes
down that idea.
That makes total sense. And like, even if this whole deferred contract didn't exist, I'm sure that would still be the case.
I will say what is crazy about all this is we were prepping to do the show and I was looking up stuff before we got going tonight. And I kind of thought about it for a minute, is that if I was in high school right now and this was going on, like, this would be my entire world. This would be teacher asked me a question in class. All right, so who settled California in the 1840s? Juan Soto. Like that would be the only thing I thought about. And I guess maybe it's because, I mean, I guess like the Correa thing to some extent a couple years ago kind of dims it for me for a little bit, because that was such a dopamine hit in the moment. Like we had just had this terrible loss, and it's like, holy shit, we're gonna have a Correa Lindor left side of the infield. We're back in it. And then it didn't happen. And there's been other guys, and I don't include Ohtani on that list because that never felt realistic to me. But there's been other guys since Cohen's took over where I'm like, okay, are we really doing this? And then it doesn't come to fruition. And it's also my experience being a soccer fan of having Liverpool being tied to so many people where, he's flying to Liverpool today to get the deal done. 12 hours later, he's signed with someone else. Like every summer you do this dance in the transfer window where it's like, all right, these are our targets. 5 days later, all of them get hoovered up. And it's like, all right, well, we got to get excited about this guy that I didn't know about a day ago.
Yeah.
And I guess like just knowing that all of this that has unfolded was exactly what I expected. I haven't found myself jumping with 2 feet into it the way I thought I probably would have. Like to me, it's almost,
you got your guard up.
Yeah, it's like, show me the passing tweet that tells me he's signing with us. Like, and then I'll get invested. But I just can't shake this feeling. It's like he played for the Yankees. He had both individual and team success. Like I've said, I'm not going to consider the Dodgers out of this unless they say they're out of this. To me, there's so many different factors to why I feel like everyone who's not a Met fan is like, oh yeah, this just makes too much sense. And to me, I'm just sitting there going, it makes too much sense for this to not happen. So my guard's up. And I also have experience with this in other sports where it's, all right, I want to see him holding up the jersey, having the press conference with Stearns and Cohen on his left and right. Like, I need that.
You know who else stuff like that kind of happens to a lot is the New York Islanders. You might not believe it, but it seems like every year, maybe not this year, but like the past few years, it seems like we are always linked to like the top free agent on the market. Obviously it started with John Tavares, and obviously like I think that everyone kind of expected him to stay with the Islanders until he didn't, like basically until he like ghosted them like the night before, like because like he basically ghosted them like before free agency started. And once midnight struck on July 1st, it was like, okay, well, the 8th year that they offered is out the window, so seems pretty clear he's not coming back. So it happened then. Then the following year, it happened with Panarin, actually.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yeah. So it happened with Panarin. Like I think I remember like some fake insider was like, breaking news: Artie Panarin is packing his shit and going to Long Island. And then
wasn't it Frankie Borelli? Or am I making that up?
It wasn't Frankie. It was like some other guy.
I remember when he used to bring me joy.
Probably had a similar name. Then then I think a year after that, I think we skipped a year, and then like we were like right at the like we were supposedly in the rest his soul the Johnny Gaudreau sweepstakes. Like it was between like us and the Devils that whole time, and then like the Blue Jackets swooped in at the last minute. So that's always a possibility too, that someone could swoop in. It could be the Dodgers too, because like you said, until even if they say they're out of it, they might not be out of it. They might just be like trying to keep a low profile.
Oh, that reminds me of the offseason that we got Johan Santana. It was pretty obvious going into that offseason. Like, I think he was a year away from free agency. So it was, well, the Twins aren't going to keep him. And whoever trades for him probably should nail down the extension immediately if you want to keep him. And I think the peak of the rivalry between the Yankees and Red Sox it was just about to end. The Red Sox had just won the World Series. Yankees were in the playoffs that year.
Yeah. And
they were always going to need pitching. This made the most sense for two teams going for it. And you would hear, well, the Mets could swing this, and it's like, yeah, but if Boston or the Yankees want him, like
They're gonna
that's
get
always
him.
how this works. If they
Yeah.
want him, they'll get him. And then you kept hearing it's like, well, something's going to happen with the Red Sox, and it's like, well, they don't want to budge on John Lester, or they don't want to budge on Jacoby Ellsbury. That's not going to happen. And it
Yeah.
was, well, the Yankees could get him, and it's, they're not going to budge on Phil Hughes.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen? And all of it, every Met fan's like, come on, fucking do it already.
Yeah,
But
like here's our fucking chance. Like these guys are, these guys got their hands in their pants.
But even that was a long drawn out process where it was like, okay, this makes sense. The Yankees and Red Sox have stepped back. You have the prospect capital, go do it. And we're all sitting there like, okay, Boston and New York said they're out of it. Like, go do it before they change their mind. And that whole out, and then it was like there was like a 3-day window where it's like,
yeah, because
they have to match.
Then if nothing happens, the price goes down, and then all of a sudden they're back in it.
It's like, okay, and they're going to give him the extension as soon as the trade's completed, correct?
Yeah,
and it felt like that took a week to get done, and it's like we've seen deals like that, like most famously the A-Rod to Boston one, and I'm like, man, don't let this happen.
Yeah,
so
it also
like that's what I think back to is every 10 minutes refreshing my Internet Explorer, like, come on, deal's done, right?
Yeah. Yeah, or like it also like there's a few other examples I could think of with like my teams and like kind of getting burned by free agents is like like I think when Alex DeBrincat was a free agent or was getting traded from Ottawa, I forget what it was, but all the reports kept saying the Islanders were in on him, and then he went to the Red Wings. There's also like a laundry list of almost Jets players over the years. Apparently, like the Jets were, the Jets are always like the team that's like in second place to get someone. Like the whole Tyreek Hill thing. Jets Jets had apparently both teams had deals in place. Tyreek Hill chose the Dolphins. Not holding it against him, like probably not the wrong choice, given what we know. But there was that. There was like everyone thought last year that Mike Evans was going to become a free agent and go to the Jets. Now, let me tell you, I never thought that was going to happen. I'm not stupid. But that was like the rumor that was heating up, like, oh, like I think what he turned down a contract extension from the Bucks, and the reports were that he was going to hit free agency, and then everyone's like, oh, Jets are going to do it. Jets are going to get Mike Evans because they're going for broke this year, and then a few days later, before free agency started, he stayed in Tampa, which I really never thought he was going to leave Tampa. I mean. Yeah, but he is a good thing going down there. No state taxes. He's got, he went from Jameis Winston to Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield. So he's always been, it's always been fairly stable at the quarterback position down there too. So, there's really no reason for him to leave, and he's put together a Hall of Fame career. But I will say with the Yankees, usually when these types of things, like when they have, like when it's someone that's either becomes available or it's a player on their team that is testing free agency, it does seem like they always get it done in the end. I remember when Derek Jeter was testing free agency, and after like the 2010 season, there were some Yankee fans and that were feeling uneasy, and I remember that was like a big debate at the time. It was like, oh, like how much money is Derek Jeter really worth? And like, there were even some people that were like, oh, will we be better off just like letting him walk? And it's like, all right, that's a little bit too far. But, it seems like anytime there's like someone that it's perceived like, all right, like you're a Yankee or you're going to be a Yankee and the Yankees need to get this done. It does seem like it always ends up happening. Like with the Aaron Judge thing, like, there was that whole saga. Like when Garrett Cole was a free agent, like 5 years ago, like, it was very much perceived like, yeah, the Yankees have to get Garrett Cole. They need that ace, and they were able to get that done. I remember like working on like a bunch of school projects at the time and like being up at like 3 a.m. and finding out we signed him. They're just, and I'm sure there's plenty of other examples, dating back when maybe like social media and stuff wasn't as prevalent, but like even like when even when they signed like Gary Sheffield, like I don't really remember what the perception was, but I'm sure there was like, a faction of Yankee fans or people that believed like, yeah, the Yankees like need to get this guy for their lineup at that time. Or like the A-Rod thing too, after the Red Sox fumbled the bag, or the trade got nixed. It was like, all right, like the Yankees have to get this done, or they're going to get this done. So it does seem like they always do get this done. The only like factor that the only thing is like usually in those situations, like all the situations I mentioned, they haven't had to deal with either the the deferral Dodgers, or the Mets having a billionaire owner who is happy to spend money on them, and like it's really not an object to him. So those are the only things, because like I think like when Aaron Judge became a free agent, like I think Steve Cohen was like pretty respectful about it. Like he was like, all right, like I get it. Like, he's a Yankee, and I don't want to like, I think like Steve Cohen didn't want to like step on toes when that whole thing went down. So he like stayed out of it. This is obviously very different because it was a 1-year rental, but he did have the team, he did have the success, which I guess will, just kind of segue into the, something we were going to do is just, we should each give our pitch, for Juan Soto. If he's listening, we should each give our personal pitch as to why, why he should come to our respective team. And, I think that, from what I hear, from what I do hear from people is that, other people that know people, is that, if it comes down to money, that's not something that's going to scare the Yankees off. And apparently the Yankees do understand the importance of, keeping Juan Soto in pinstripes. Obviously, he seemed to really like playing with Judge. And I think that he doesn't necessarily want to be like the face of a franchise. He kind of seems to, there is this like perception that he'd kind of rather be like the other guy, so to speak. So he could do that.
That's what I've heard. Is he's multiple reporters have said like it's not a necessity for him to sign with it, or if you're going to sign him, that he has to be the guy. That's like he's cool being it, but that's not like he doesn't have to go
Yeah, he's
somewhere
also
where
cool
it's
being
me or
like,
him.
yeah, he's also cool being like the other guy. I would also say I know that when when negotiations and things first started, like earlier, about a month ago or a few weeks ago, that when the Yankees did their whole presentation, and when they first met with Soto, the report was supposedly that he was very, he was impressed with everything. And obviously, he liked being here. He loved playing with Judge and all that. But I did hear that he told the Yankees like that you guys need to like make improvements. So I do wonder like what if he specified what improvements they need to make. And my response to that would be, we hear you. What do you think? Like, what do you think we need? Is it another starting pitcher? Should we go out and get Corbin Burns? Is it just like an improvement in like our philosophy and fundamentals? Because I hear that too. I would hope the Yankees organization is, taking, I would hope that they take a hard look at everything that's happened like in the World Series and throughout, really throughout the past few years that really like reared their head in the World Series. And, all the jabs that certain players on the Dodgers took at us, most of whom did nothing to contribute to the World Series, but that's okay. So my response to him would be like, hey, we hear you. We're going to make the money right. And, obviously you're the missing piece to keep us in contention, but after we get you, we're going to go above and beyond to make sure that we get it done and to make sure that, you're a Yankee for the rest of your career and that's a fruitful career filled with championships and individual accolades and money and the most beautiful women you could possibly imagine and whatever else your heart desires, Juan Soto. The Bronx is the place for you.
Well, I mean, I guess the fine line that you would run on that is, you want your player to feel like, hey, yeah, they listen to me. If I've got ideas, they're willing to listen. But then, as we've talked about on the show here before, how much influence has Aaron Judge had on the team's decision making over the past 2 years in terms of who they've brought in, what kind of approach they have, what kind of, not even necessarily who they got, but that he likes batting average type guys. And it's okay. Well, how do you go from taking tips to, okay, this guy's essentially calling the shots for us? Because I do think there's value in listening to your players because they're the ones going out and doing it. Then you also don't want them to be the GM too, because that gets you into trouble. And I'm just going to get a drink of water here before I start my pitch, so I can cede back to you.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too. Obviously, I think that especially with someone of Soto's caliber, his opinion should definitely be valued. But obviously, you walk a fine line when you let the players become the GM or start making the decisions. We've kind of talked about. We have kind of talked about Aaron Judge and his influence and how he seems to he was supposedly the reason that Alex Verdugo was in the lineup over Dominguez. Although I do feel like if when Dominguez was called up at the end of the regular season, I do feel like if he would have forced the issue a little bit more, then the Yankees might not have had a choice but to put him in the game over Verdugo. In the playoffs, I think the biggest issue was that he was pretty much just as much of a non-factor at the plate as Verdugo was, and his defense was worse. That's my thought, but I've also heard that the real reason is because Alex Verdugo goes out to dinner with Aaron Judge and hangs out with him, and Anthony Rizzo babysits his dog and stuff like that, but Jason Dominguez isn't tight with him like that. So, without knowing with certainty what's true, I would say, you do walk a fine line in that sense. Obviously with someone like Soto, I think, if he's like, hey, like, I want to come, I think if he says something like, hey, I want to come here, I want to stay, but like, can you also get Corbin Burns? I'd say, blank checks for everyone. Did somebody say deferred money? Because why? We can do that too. There's no reason. There's no reason we can't.
We'll pay it in ATH. That shit ain't real.
I don't think. Yeah. Although I don't. And without really knowing anything, I don't think Soto is really going to go for the whole deferred money thing. I think that the vibe I get is he wants as much money as he can get, and I think he wants it now. That at least that was the vibe I got, like when he was like after the World Series ended and he was he was talking to reporters and obviously they're berating him with questions about his future. Obviously he wasn't going to say anything and he wasn't going to say anything that might make him lose leverage in his negotiations, but he very much put it out there like, I'm going to the highest bidder. I'm available to all 30 teams. Come get me, pretty much was like what he said. So I think that, if he has ideas that are good ideas, I would say yes, absolutely. Like if you're trying to get other like high quality ball players in the building with you that can, really push this team over the top, then absolutely. If it's like you want your buddy, like, I don't know who Juan Soto's like boys with, but it's like, oh, if you want your buddy who's like not actually very good, then we might want to stay away from that because we kind of already have enough of that going on. And
the interesting thing
there
is
are plenty of examples in New York sports of like why that's not a good idea.
There's been talk about potentially Vlad Jr. being a potential package deal, which boy, would that throw a wrench into things if he went in a certain direction.
Oh boy.
Say he comes here and he says, I want Vlad Jr. Well, we all know what position Vlad plays.
Yeah, that would be quite a conundrum.
Unless Vlad Jr. wants to DH.
If
he does,
I guess
I'm with it.
I guess that position is also technically open right now.
It is.
I mean, I'm not very high on Vlad Jr. personally. If it was us and Juan Soto was like, oh yeah, Vlad's my boy. It's me and Vlad, or it's nobody. Even though I don't really like Vlad, I think I might do it just because like we don't have a first baseman right now.
Also, I think you would kill in your ballpark.
Like I think that he would. Yeah, I think he would do. I think as long as he stays healthy, he would do just fine in Yankee Stadium. I might have tweeted some things about him. I may need to delete if that happens, but I think that it would actually be a pretty decent fit for us. I mean, I'd probably rather get Cody Bellinger, as far as like the first baseman of my choice, but if Soto says it's me and Vlad or nobody, I think that's a concession I'd be willing to make. Anything beyond that, like as far as like, that caliber of player or lower, then you're pushing it. But I think that given our roster the way it's currently constructed, I think that it would make enough sense to do it.
So if I'm across the table from Juan Soto, I think this is what I'm telling him. Look, I know you were paying attention to the playoffs. You saw what we looked like. You saw what this team's missing. It probably needs one more bat. You know this
you
ball.
Got closer.
You played here plenty with
put up a better fight against the Dodgers.
You've played in this ballpark. You know how to hit this ballpark. We've got a owner with more money than God. You say the number. We're here. You don't have to be the guy. We have a future Hall of Fame shortstop who will gladly take all that responsibility and has done that with lesser teams. Also, you two seem pretty friendly. That should work, right? But yeah, you don't have to be the leader. If you're not comfortable with that, Francisco is, and that's fine. We're not asking you to. If you want to be one, cool. Doors open. And also, because we consider you a hitting savant, we're always trying to fix this offense. Really, we've done it basically since we've opened this park because offense has never been our forte as long as we've been in Citi Field. What would you fix? We're giving you basically the keys to this franchise with all this money. You're the hitting guru. What do we got to do? We're here to help you. We want to make you an even better hitter and make the rest of our team better hitters too. You tell us. This is you want a DH? Cool. You want to play right field? Say less. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
we are here for you.
Yeah, I mean, shit. If he wants to DH for us, I'd be open to that. I mean, if there's one knock on Soto's game, it is that his defense is a little subpar. It's not bad. It's not bad defense, and I would say my rebuttal to that would be that right field in Yankee Stadium is a lot easier to play than right field in Citi Field. So if you want to, if you don't want to worry about, if you don't want to worry about like becoming the high paid superstar who fans start to turn on because like, of like a catastrophic error or maybe your range just isn't there. I would say you're much safer. You're much safer here than you are there. This is what you know. But I do think you bring a lot. I do think you bring up a lot of. I do think you bring up a lot of compelling points and compelling arguments.
And I would close with this: you can go to the Yankees, and that's fine. You might win there. There's a decent chance you do. But you know whose team it'll always be when they do? It'll be 99's team. And even if you're the one that carries them, you know what they'll say? Man, he's up there with Bernie Williams and Mickey and DiMaggio and Reggie. If you go to Boston, that's cool. You can do that. And if you win there, oh, well, he took the torch from Mookie, or he took the torch from Poppy, or man, he's the best.
Manny Ramirez.
He's almost as good a hitting outfielder as Manny. If you go to LA, you're just another one of their billion-dollar superstars. You win here, you are knighted. Believe you win here, because that's almost considered impossible with this franchise. I mean, I know you can't talk to him now because he's dead, but talk to Tom Seaver, talk to Keith Hernandez, talk to Darryl Strawberry, Doc Gooden, and those 86 guys. Talk to Mike Piazza, talk to David Wright, who didn't even win a World Series. Ask them what it's like to be the guy for the Mets.
Or even just like
have an adulation here that you're not going to get anywhere else. Yeah, you may not be as nationally visible as those other three, but I promise you, you will not be more loved, especially if you win, than you will here.
Yeah, that is one thing, because obviously, if we win, and, I'm sure that the real ones in our fan base would, know, like, I think the real ones in our fan base do know, like, we don't get as far as we got this year without Soto. There's a reason why we, haven't been in the playoffs or we haven't been in the World Series in 15 years. And there's a reason why we got there this year. And that reason is Soto. And, so I think that the real ones do know that. And if we do get over the hump with you, the real ones will recognize it. Would you be, would you be as immortalized as Judge, even if you outperform in the playoffs? Maybe not, but the real ones will know. Also, the Mets have like 32 players that are going to have your number. Do you really want to pay? Like the entire roster for your number, or do you want to just keep the number that you had? Talk about spreading misinformation. I can do that too.
Listen, you just got to get a couple of those guys like a good Rolex. You don't even have to get them a beach house. It doesn't have to be the Jeff Fiegels, Eli Manning thing. I mean, just set them up with like a 401k. Give them a pension.
Yeah. Even that. It's like, all right, like you're telling me I don't have to worry about, working after I'm no longer able to play baseball.
Yeah, I think just put him on payroll.
I think that'd be more than enough for a lot of people. So, we both said our pieces. So Soto, if you're listening, take all this into consideration. And whatever you decide.
5%.
Yeah, exactly. But let's segue into something else. Let's say we don't get Soto. Let's say the Mets don't get Soto or the Yankees don't get Soto. What would your plan be if the Mets don't sign Soto? How would you pivot? Would you like call Pete Alonso and be like, hey, all that money we were planning on spending Soto, well, we could give you a pretty hefty chunk of it? Or like what would be your next course of action?
Well, so definitely Pete would be back on the table at that point because it would be reasonable because, well, got to put those funds somewhere. I guess the big question would be, so I believe he turned down in 2023, I believe it was 170 over 6. And the consensus was on September 30th, okay, well, he ain't getting that.
A big mistake.
And then from game 3 of the wild card series onward, well, he made some of it back. How much he made back, I don't know. We'll see. But
I have a hot take. I think he might have made it all back and then some.
Woo.
People, I think when it comes to this stuff, I think I think people have short memories, especially like executives. I think they do have short memories. Now, obviously they'll have seen the body of work, but I think that when you're talking about bidding on a player that can hit 52 home runs or however many home runs, someone who can go 50 plus, someone who's been the best power hitter in baseball since 2019, which is not like, that's not like hyperbole. That's like statistically true. I think that's something that when you're in free agency and you're trying to improve your team, I think that people will look, obviously, like, arbitration's one thing. When you're in arbitration, you're looking for every reason not to pay a player. It's like a very nasty process. But I think when it's free agency and when it comes down to it, if you really want someone, you don't really, and if you're serious about winning a championship, you don't care what they did from April till September 29th. You care about what he did from October 3rd on.
And I mean, not only was it just that home run against the Brewers, but came up pretty big against the Phillies. Had some moments against the Dodgers too. I mean, it wasn't all roses, but it seemed like whatever was troubling him having that moment against the Brewers was what finally snapped him out of it. And I think, like, if he had a moment like that in the regular season, like, that might have got him out of his funk earlier too, because I think that would have, it clearly seemed to be a confidence thing for him. And I think having something like that reminded him, oh yeah, I'm Pete Alonso. This is what I do. I do think if you don't bring Pete back, well, the options become very interesting, and not in a good way, because you could move Vientos over to first, and that's reasonable because his power numbers are great. But then you're just creating a new problem at third, unless you're absolutely sure that Brett Beatty fixed himself, which
I think
can I say that with confidence? No, I can't.
I think Vientos' defense at third base is like good enough too.
I think it's a little overblown. Like, does he have his moments where you're like, okay, yeah, you got to get that.
Like, yeah. I think he's fine at third base.
I think you can get by with it.
He's not elite as a defender, but I think that he is. I think that he is fine and above. He's like a step above serviceable as a defender at third base, especially when you consider what he does with his bat.
And then the other first base free agent options are Christian Walker, who still really good. He's 34. So even if you're like, okay, we can plug this guy into the lineup right now, we'll still get the power numbers. How long are you getting that? And how much are you willing to, if you weren't willing to give Pete 6 years for however much, how much are you really willing to give Christian Walker, who's going to be 35 next season? Like, I don't know if that's necessarily the best move. And then after that, it's Paul Goldschmidt, who's good, but not as good as he was 3 years ago, and 37. So realistically,
I think
behind him.
I think Goldschmidt his age really started to show this year.
And then it's like Carlos Santana, who's 39.
Obviously he's only a couple of years removed from winning the MVP, but I feel like this year specifically, Paul Goldschmidt's age really started to show.
I think, I guess the other interesting thought would be if they're willing to go to 700 with Soto, and then that doesn't come to fruition. So you're telling me, okay, you have the $700 million war chest that you were ready to go and do this for. Okay. So say you give Pete 150. All right, fine. You could still do, realistically, whether you want to make Vientos a DH at this age or not, I guess that comes down to his preference. I don't know if Vientos likes playing the field or if he just wants to hit. If he just wants to hit, great, because I think that solves another problem right there, because what I would do, again, I'm not going to claim to know more than David Stern, certainly not, but I think what you could do is if you bring Pete back and you don't have Soto, you make Vientos your DH. Let's spend some of that money on Willy Adames and put him at third.
Yeah.
I did see that some of his defensive numbers did drop quite noticeably last year at short. Well, guess what? I'm not asking him to play short anymore. And you know what? He's going to be at third base. You know what's going to be who to his left? A top 5 defensive shortstop in the league. He doesn't have to get to every ball.
Maybe ever
can do that. And guess what? I'm keeping Pete's Power in my lineup. I'm now allowing Vientos to just be a DH. I mean, he's got a chance to be an elite DH. He's already an elite hitter as a third baseman. If he's allowed to just focus on hitting the whole time, sky's the limit. And I'm adding Adames' bat into the lineup. Okay, I've added some more punch. Did I get the guy I wanted? No. Am I going to let my whole offseason completely fall apart because of that? No. And that's how you do it.
Yeah, it's funny. Pretty much every player that you mentioned is someone who I would have, as far as like the Yankees plan B, if we were to not get Soto, pretty much every player you mentioned is like someone, that would be in consideration at the very least. Like I think for the Yankees, if they were to miss out on Soto, I think Pete Alonso for them would be an absolute no-brainer.
Oh, he'd be terrifying in that park.
You put Judge and Pete in that same lineup together, in that stadium.
Plus Stanton.
Plus Stanton. That's like, obviously you don't have the lefty to break it up, but at that point, does it even fucking matter?
I mean, and Jazz could bounce back next year. Like I think like Jazz having a full season as a left-handed hitter in Yankee Stadium, I think is going to do wonders for him.
Yeah, I think that's overlooked. I heard he was I heard he was like out on a boat, like smoking and drinking or something, enjoying his life.
Listen, who amongst us hasn't after a loss?
Yeah, I would.
Who are me to judge?
Yeah, I mean, I typically, do that after, after a day at work, so can't really hold it against them.
Listen,
but hey, I mean, MLB doesn't drug test
I smoked a real cigar and had beers last Wednesday just because my soccer team finally beat my nemesis. So I'm not gonna wag fingers at Jazz for losing and doing that.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not knocking it at all. I just thought that it was worth mentioning.
Also, for all the olds that bring that up and are clutching pearls, just do a simple Google search that says the Mickey Mantle letter.
Right, the Mickey Mantle letter. Let alone
what's known does not need to be explained.
Yeah. Also, like, you think Babe Ruth was playing baseball sober?
No.
Like, come on. So yeah, it's funny how like it's kind of funny how you have this dynamic of like, like the boomer, like get off my lawn fan who like hates fun and like everything associated with it. Like just like, the like shut up and play the game and get off my lawn type of fan. You have that type of fan that hates fun, but then it's like they don't acknowledge that like baseball, and like those are also the people who claim probably to like be like, baseball purists or like, respecting the history of the game and all that stuff, and like, oh, I liked it better when everyone was humble or whatever. It's like, but it's like they refuse to like, they're not acknowledging the part where it's like, yeah, like people used to play this game drunk. Like that was what you do. People would drink beers and smoke cigars
or on greenies.
I think it was it Billy Martin, I think, who had the quote that was like, yeah, like my ball players drink whiskey. I found that the ones that drink apple juice don't win too many ball games.
I think that was Billy Martin.
Yeah, so it's just kind of funny. That's just like a side note, but it is kind of funny how you have like that type of fan who's like not acknowledging that.
Imagine a team like the 86 Mets existing now. Imagine how that goes over.
Yeah. Do you think if the 86, like say all the teams in 1986 were the same, but this is just a question I just thought of 5 seconds ago, but say all the 1986 teams were the same footing, same players, and they were the same caliber or whatever. But like all the exercise technology and all that stuff is still 1986, but like the social media climate is like 2024. Do you think the Mets still win?
I mean, they barely did then. They almost didn't get away with it.
Yeah.
And in truth, I think part of it is that Doc and Daryl did their dirt. Like part of it is, they got more famous because of where they played. It probably also sped up why things went the way they did for them and why the Mets only had one World Series when I think everyone would have thought after 86, well, this team's going to win 4 or 5. And then they didn't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and there's other reasons for that. I mean, like, because it was the culture and, reading the Bad Guys 1 book, the takeaway I always took from that was the worst mistake the Mets ever made was trading Kevin Mitchell because Doc and Daryl looked at him as a big brother. And it was one of those things that if Kevin Mitchell, like, saw them getting in trouble or saw them going down that path and told them, hey, you got to knock that off,
reel him back in.
They would have. Like, that's the kind of respect they had for him. They traded him after 86, and we saw how it went.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. But getting back to what we were actually talking about with the whole Plan B thing. So, pretty much like every player you had mentioned is someone that, pretty much every player you had mentioned are players that would be like part of my Plan B for the Yankees. Like, all right, if we don't get Soto, go get Corbin Burns, go get Pete Alonso. Willy Adames, I think, absolutely that would be. I think Willy Adames would be a great fit for the Yankees. So he's a switch hitter. Or is he a lefty? He's a lefty, right?
No, Adames is righty strictly.
Oh, he's strictly righty. Okay, but you would have him. He can play second base. It seems very much like the Yankees are not going to be pursuing Gleyber Torres, and I mean Willy Adames would be an upgrade, quite frankly, at second base over Torres, both defensively and offensively. I'd say he's a lot more consistent. So, like, that would definitely be part of it. But at the same time, also, it's like the Plan B players, maybe with the exception of Pete, because of, like, the money he'd command, but most of the Plan B players that we're talking about, like, would also be part of my Plan A if we were to get Soto. Like, if we get Soto, I'd be like, all right, like, we should get a Corbin Burns and or Willy Adames. Nolan Arenado, not so much. I've always loved Nolan Arenado. I've always been a big fan of his, but I do think that he, I think his best days are behind him, and I don't think that would be. I don't think that would
considering playing first. That worries me that he put that out there because that means he knows his body, and he's like,
that means
I can use the break.
Yeah, that means he knows that he's worst, or either that, or he's trying to make himself. Either that, or he's trying to like make himself more marketable, to potential suitors. But also, if he has to even say that, then
right.
The question exists, and
if he knew he could still play,
if it smells like a rat, by golly, it's a rat.
If he knew he could still play third base the way he did in 2018, he wouldn't say that. Even if he was trying to pitch himself,
right? Exactly.
Like, I'm Nolan Arenado. You know what I do.
Yeah, so Nolan Arenado, I've always been a big fan of his, like always loved him in Colorado, and he's had some good years in St. Louis too before, I think I think Father Time has started to catch up with him a little bit over the past year or so. But overall, I don't think he would be part of the solution in 2025, but pretty much everyone else, I mean, like, if the Yankees get Soto, then, you're probably not getting Pete Alonso too. I mean, it's probably, even like giving Soto close to $700 million is like probably pushing it for Hal Steinbrenner. Because I mean, there have been reports that, and like the way he's operated in the past has kind of been like, yeah, he'll spend money, but like he has his price and he draws his line. Like basically they didn't sign Yamamoto because they did not believe that he should make more money than Cole. And, they have a point.
Probably right.
Yeah, they have a point. They're probably right about that. But I mean, They sure could have used him. Anyone really could have. So I mean, I think sometimes you gotta set shit like that aside, but at the same time, yeah. So I would say someone like Pete Alonso who would command like big money. You're probably, you're probably factoring him out of the equation. I think he would, I think if we got Soto, I think he still would be willing to open the checkbook for someone like Corbin Burns, because I think it's pretty clear that like starting pitching is still like a need for this team. Yes, Clark Schmidt made a leap this year and showed improvement. And obviously Luis Gil had a great rookie season, won Rookie of the Year. Congratulations, Luis Gil. But you would think he can only get better. But if you're talking about someone who can go out and someone else who can go out and just lock you down for 6 or 7 innings in a playoff game against a monstrous lineup, I think Corbin Burns is your guy. I think that, I think Schmidt, as good as Clark Schmidt's regular season was, I think that, in the playoffs, he kind of showed that he's maybe not quite ready for prime time. I think that Gil kind of the same thing too. So a lot of the plan B players would also be part of my plan A, and like Christian Walker is an interesting one because obviously, him in Yankee Stadium, he might hit 50 home runs even at 34 years old, but he is 34, and how viable is that? How viable would he be beyond 2025? Like we shouldn't just, either way, like regardless if we get Soto or not, like we shouldn't just be thinking about 2025. We should be thinking about pretty much the next 3 to 4 years before Judge's body inevitably starts to break down, and then you're dealing with the back end of that contract.
I would say as part of the plan B for the Mets pitching wise, and we'll get into who they've signed in a little bit.
Yeah.
To me, it's you bring back Manaea, obviously. And then to me, it's Corbin Burns is probably the only other starter worth pursuing that's out there. And I've said before, if they bring Severino back, I'd be fine with it. I get the feeling they're not.
Yeah, it doesn't.
That's just kind of the vibe I get. I couldn't really pin it down, but I don't think they are. So I would bring
I don't really think
back.
The Yankees would bring him back either.
Corbin Burns, to me, is the only other guy that I would say, yeah, that's definitely a guy that you should add. I do think they should add another top flight starting pitcher to go with Senga and Manaea, but I think you would have to do it in a trade because I look at the other names. Snell's off the board. Yusei Kikuchi's off for a lot more than I would have paid for. So Angels being Angels.
Yeah, that kind of
before. I would not pay Max Fried.
Kind of fucks up the whole market.
Sure did. Starting pitching prices are just insane right now. And again, we'll get to that. Max Fried, again, you want to sign an ace or the ace of a team that won a World Series in your division. You've done this twice now. It ended horribly both times. Why would you do this again? And then after that, it's like Jack Flaherty's good, but he's going to want a lot. And I don't know. Nate Eovaldi, good, but he's 35. Verlander, 42, pass. Charlie Morton, 41, he ain't leaving Atlanta. Like, Shane Bieber's 30, and he's going to miss most of this upcoming year with Tommy John anyway. Like, to me, I would be looking at trade targets for starting pitching. I would say, and the price might be a little higher because he's in division, Jesus Luzardo. I don't hate that.
Yeah, I think he could be.
Maybe. I think the price might be too high on that one.
Yeah, I think he could be pried away from Miami.
Yeah, I mean, and Miami does well in trades, but I think the price for Jesus Luzardo is probably a little lower than it is for Garrett Crochet, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
and if that's their move, I'd be all right with that. Like if he's like our 3 or 4, like inevitably. If your rotation ends up being something of Senga, Manaea, Luzardo, David Peterson, Frankie Montas, and then maybe Brandon Sproat down the line. Although I would think they probably would ask for Sproat in a deal, but still, that's perfectly fine. I'd be all right with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have the prospect capital to go do that if they want.
Yeah. Do you think that like as far as the White Sox go, do you think that they for them it makes the most sense to trade Crochet? Or do you think that maybe if they're trying to avoid breaking their own record next year, that they might want to hang on to him, and at least maybe he's more of an in-season target than a off-season target? Or do you think that their best bet is to part ways with him, to get his values high right now and might never be higher?
I think in cases like this, what I've always heard is for a player that's this valued, these are when those type of deals get done, because when you have the trade deadline, you have that rush of you're trying to take care of your team on the field right now that as your season's unfolding, and you're fielding 8 other calls, and you're trying to figure out everything else that's going on, and you have a deadline lurking with that. Whereas right now, these guys have all the time in the world to iron this out if they want. And so inevitably, when you have that room, you can go get the deal that you really want. And I think it would make more sense to deal him right now because, yeah, could they go out and break their record next year? Sure. But I think if you're the White Sox, one, you already have the record. Like, what? Cool, we lost more the next year. So what?
And I think it would be hard for, even if they lost him and even if they had like a worse roster on paper. Shout outs to the Nope season series that we did. I do think that even with that, it would be hard for them to lose more games next year.
But also, I guess part of it's like, okay, Garrett Crochet's good right now. By the time the White Sox get to the level of good where they want to be again, he's probably not going to be a part of that, or at least a main part of that.
Yeah.
It's more likely that you want whatever you get for Garrett Crochet is going to speed that timeline up. And you don't want to be sitting in this kind of sewage forever. You want to get out of this quickly. Your best route to doing that is acing a trade for Crochet and acing the trade for Luis Robert, because those are really the only two pieces that are going to entice any other team in the league. So you have to get those two right. If you get those two right, that can speed up your rebuild in a hurry. On top of, you got to hit your own prospects. You got to draft correctly. But yeah, it makes more sense for the White Sox to try to go amplify the rest of their roster by what they get back for Crochet and Robert than it does to just hang on to them.
Yeah, no, I think I would agree with you on that. I think it's just a matter of like what they're thinking. Cause I just remember, after they broke the record, the owner like wrote that like letter to the fans that he posted on Instagram where it was basically like, hey, like, sorry, we suck so much. We promise we'll try to do better. So like, I don't know if like, if trading, and they had like 17 fans at their game. So, that 17 fans might turn into 9 if they trade like their one good.
And that stadium in the suburbs might go up a little quicker.
Yeah. So, that's my only question. Like, I think it would be the right thing for them to do. I just don't know, what their brass is thinking. But yeah, so as far as this episode goes, as you alluded to before, we're going to talk about, some of the moves that the Mets made. We're kind of going to split this episode, I think, into 2 halves. So this will be part 1, which is basically like the Soto, this is basically like the Soto sweepstakes and the plan B for not getting Soto, which we can pretty much close out now. And then we can do part 2 where we can kind of, talk about some other like news and notes about some moves that the Mets have made, and some moves or non-moves that the Yankees have made, and just news on that front. So any final thoughts before we close this out? Like, any final thoughts on the Soto sweepstakes, or just in general? Like, or plan Bs is if you don't get them. Like any final thoughts on, before we close out this portion?
Juan, you would have my undying love and respect forever. I don't know if that means anything, but
I mean, I'm sure it means something. I don't know how much it would mean in comparison to my undying love and respect forever. But I digress. So I guess, I think that's what it's going to come down to, honestly. I think, I think both sides do have compelling, I think both sides do have compelling pitches to Juan Soto. Obviously the money talks louder than anything. And obviously he would have, whichever team gets him would be in contention for a World Series. I mean, I'd say, both of these teams are already World Series contenders, one with and one without him. So I'd say, the money's there, the potential to win is there, the endorsements, the limelight of New York City, all of that's there. So I really do think that when push comes to shove, the tiebreaker is which one of our undying love and respect he values more. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. No pressure, but gonna end this part of the episode on that note. We'll take a brief pause and we'll be back with part 2.